Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm giving my first thoughts on Immaculate.
Well, that was a movie.
Now, in case you don't know, Immaculate is the new horror film starring Sydney Sweeney. It was directed by Michael Mohan and written by Andrew Lobel. Sydney Sweeney also came on as a producer for the film. Apparently, she was cast in it years ago, and then because of budgeting or something falling through, it never got made. So now that she's famous, she was able to come on as a producer and help make this movie happen. If you haven't seen the trailer, you don't know anything about it. It follows a nun who mysteriously gets pregnant. It is advertised as being a horror movie, but it's actually, in my opinion, more of a thriller. There's very few horrific things happening in here. There's only one, maybe two jump scares, and it really it wasn't a scary movie. And not to say that it didn't try a couple times, it did, but it's not really overall, in my opinion, much of a horror movie. It was much more of a thriller, but regardless, it was fine. I don't know. I was really curious about this movie, even though I didn't really expect it at all to be a great movie. Sydney Sweeney, for those of you who don't know, is kind of the new it girl. Everybody's talking about her. She's very popular. She came to popularity mainly because of the TV show Euphoria, which I've never seen, but I have seen clips from it, and it seemed like she had some acting ability. I wasn't sure of how much, but I was interested to see how much. She's, like I said, extremely popular. A lot of that has to do with her looks, honestly, but I was curious to see if she had the acting ability to live up to the fame that she has. So I wanted to see this movie because it was the first thing she had put out that I knew of that was at least a little bit appealing to me. And my jury is still out. So this movie takes place in Italy, and she's the one American girl in Italy. She's got kind of a Valley Girl delivery to a lot of her lines. She's supposedly supposed to be from Detroit, Michigan, and I didn't get that vibe at all, but still she was kind of a stereotypical American blonde girl in this movie. So I have yet to see what exactly her range as an actress is. I thought the delivery of her lines was okay. I mean, she was able to cry on command. She was screaming. She had some range to her performance, but, there's varying levels to actors that are, in Hollywood, where it's some just play the same character in every movie. Some can completely disappear into a role. I have no idea yet still exactly what her range is, but I thought she was fine in this movie. She has a friend in the film played by Benedetta Benedetta Parcaroli, probably butchered that, and I thought she was great. I thought she was really good. A lot of the acting in this movie was actually pretty good, which surprised me for horror movies, but then again, like I said, not really a horror movie. Definitely tried to be at times, but didn't really give horror movie vibes for the most part. But like I said, this movie was fine to me. Nothing special. After I'm done recording this review, I don't really think I'm gonna be thinking about this movie much. There was so much predictable about it. Everything that happened, other than the twist, I didn't fully see the twist coming. I got the primary gist of the twist from the first scene, but there was elements of it that I didn't see coming, so I will give it that. But so much of this movie was the first thing you thought of was the thing that was going to happen. So I'll get into spoilers in a minute, but I just want to give an overall view on it first. It wasn't really scary. There was a couple of moments that were. The plot, like I said, it's predictable, so it's not very exciting. And then the one part that wasn't predictable was just because it was so stupid. It was kind of like M. Night Shyamalan-esque levels of plot twist. I was just really? That's what we came up with? So the only reason I actually was able to enjoy parts of it was I thought genuinely the story until the twist was somewhat interesting, and I thought a lot of the acting was really good, so I was actually invested because of the characters. So kind of a 50-50. I'd give this movie a 5. Maybe a 5.5, because I feel like I did slightly enjoy it more than I didn't, but barely, if anything. So we're nitpicking over a 5 versus a 5.5, though. It's not really worth going to the theater to seeing. This is totally fine watching it when it comes out on streaming, if you even want to watch it then. It was the epitome of fine. There's so much to critique about it. There was some fun things about it. Parts of the movie looked good. Parts of it were definitely people trying to be artsy. They did things like there was this long shot at the end of the movie where they were trying to do something, and so I appreciate that. But overall, pretty forgettable. Didn't really gain anything, like I said, knowledge-wise with Sydney Sweeney. Still haven't decided if she's a good actor or not, but definitely at least somewhat okay, at least somewhat competent, because she wasn't terrible in this. So like I said, the jury's still out for me with her, but I am at least now even more curious now to see if she can act in something else, as long as the movie itself is a bit better than what this was. So yeah, 5.5, something like that. Don't rush out to see it, but it's also not terrible. So maybe if you got a lazy weekend, you want to go see something but don't know what, this could be a fun thing just to kind of enjoy with some friends. Movie theater, the theater was primarily empty, so I mean, you could laugh at a couple of silly parts, you know, have some fun with it. I think it's that kind of movie. So anyway, I'm going to get into spoilers now, talk more about the plot and why it was frustrating or kind of silly to me at times. So if you want to hear that, please do hang around, but if you don't want anything spoiled, click away, go watch it, come back, and we can talk about it then. But don't forget to like, share, and subscribe first. Thanks, guys. Bye. So, spoilers. Yeah, so the biggest thing, the big twist in this, from the first scene, you know, she's not going to become pregnant because of God. It's not going to be some, you know, spiritual thing. It's like, immediately I went, okay, so they raped her, you know, they drugged and raped her. You see that she, early on in the movie, she passes out and then has a really weird dream. So you're like, that is when she got raped. Who did it? Which of these weird guys in power did it? Because there's a lot of creepy guys you don't trust. Is it the doctor? Is it the deacon? Is it the bishop? Who is it? It's none of them exactly. They supposedly have one of like the nails from Jesus being crucified, and they found DNA on it and are using that to clone, and she was used as a surrogate to give birth to this clone. And it's hilariously stupid for so many reasons. It's like the writers watched Jurassic Park but didn't understand, like, the whole reason the DNA was saved is because it was in this rock. And so it's like, it's DNA that was able to last. If it's just like a nail that got blood on it, it's not gonna last thousands of years. That's so silly. That's so stupid. But anyway, so that's what they're doing, and I thought it was dumb. I thought it was incredibly dumb. I thought the plot would have been much better if they could have just kept it simply, they raped her. Just keep it simple. Keep it the bad guys are bad guys, and they're doing bad shit. They raped her because, I don't know, reasons. Like, come up with a better reason than they're doing biological stuff. And very early on, the bad guy mentions that he was a biologist before he moved into, you know, the church and stuff. And so right away you knew that there was going to be something with that. I didn't know that it was going to be, you know, biological engineering. He was going to be cloning and shit. I thought, you know, that was his background and how he scientifically came up with a way to drug her and rape her. That's what I thought it was. But anyway, there's just a scene, like there's this little happy montage of her being at the parish or whatever, and so it's like, oh, they're hanging up sheets, oh, now she has to chase a chicken, oh, now this, and oh, now that. And so much of it was like, oh, well, immediately you know that's going to come back later. And so that's fine. I'm okay with setting up something that's going to come back later. But the problem is it came back immediately. When she hung up the sheets, you're like, oh, that's going to come back later. And then it was 30 seconds later that they then did something with the sheets. And you're like, well, that's no longer clever then. Like, that's just annoying. And I was like, well, of course. All right, cool. So much of this writing and pacing was just bad. Like, typically in horror movies, you show something scary and then you start the plot. Just a little teaser at the beginning, somebody dying, somebody being attacked, whatever. I get that, but the whole movie, especially since this wasn't a pure horror, it felt much more like a thriller drama about, you know, mystery even about what's going on here. They show at the beginning of the movie some other nun trying to run away and then being grabbed, her leg broken, comically so. It just was like, your leg's broken, and then being buried alive. And first of all, you shouldn't have had either moment, but the buried alive was just like, it felt like a tack on to that. We didn't need that. We could have stopped at the leg being broken, but we shouldn't have shown any of that, because that means that we're going into this parish immediately knowing that they're bad guys. And that removes all sort of suspense, all sort of mystery, you know, from the jump. They're the bad guys, and sure, you get that from the trailer too. That's just how modern filmmaking works, but it's like, don't do that. Let us think, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I've been tricked, maybe I'm being shown things that seem obvious but they're not actually, and then when they are obvious, then you can roll your eyes. But like, don't give away that they're the bad guys immediately. You should be wondering, are all the nuns bad guys? Are just some of these people bad guys? No, they're all evil, and they're all in cahoots doing something wrong, and you know that from the beginning of this movie. That removes all sort of suspense and tension. Don't do that. That's bad filmmaking. Like, I know you want to just have a scary moment to catch the viewers at the beginning, but it clearly didn't work because the guy in front of me fell asleep anyway. So don't do that. It removes any sort of tension and suspense. It took an interesting idea and made it incredibly boring, and then threw in, like I said, like an M. Night Shyamalan level twist that was so lame. It ruined a lot of the story because like it was reminiscent of like Old to me when I saw that movie, and that's such a fascinating idea. And if you've read the graphic novel, you know how good that story can be. But then, you know, you have to throw in something about science and politics and something evil going on. I was like, I don't need that. I don't. And this movie didn't need that either. So just keep it simple. Sometimes that's fine. And then also, I don't know, make it scary. This movie just wasn't scary. And like I said, part of that is due to like intentional style. This movie isn't a traditional horror movie in a lot of ways, but even when it was trying to be scary, it wasn't consistently. It really wasn't. And it should have been, and I don't know why it wasn't. It just missed the mark in a lot of areas. At the end, there was an interesting moment where she finally gives birth to this spawn of Satan, and they keep the camera on her the whole time. I think it was a one-shot take of her screaming and screaming and screaming, finally give birth. You hear her give birth. You see her bite the umbilical cord. She walks over, grabs a stone, and crushes the baby. And frankly, actually, I think there was a cut in there when they went to the stone. Maybe there wasn't. If there wasn't, okay, I get it because they're doing something artsy. If there was, that's just stupid. But they never show the baby, is my point. There's this, you know, grotesque, supposedly, thing. We can't see it. We never get to see it. I was like, that really felt like it was missing from that moment. We really should have been able to see this grotesque creature that had been created inside of her. We should have seen that moment, and we didn't get to see it, and I thought that was really anticlimactic. A lot of this was, and some of it comedically so. Like, so when she's trying to get away from the bad guy, she locks him in this room and sets it on fire, and you're like, haha, all right, he's burning. Something explodes in there, don't know what, but something explodes, and you're like, okay, she beat him. Then you hear a fire extinguisher and he puts out the flame, and that was honestly hilarious because it's like, well, of course there's a fire extinguisher in there, he's fine. And then he breaks down the door and gets out, but then he lays there unconscious, and then so he's chasing her later and she has to kill him later, and it's like, why didn't you kill him then? None of her decisions really make that much sense. When she hears her best friend screaming because she's been speaking out against them, they take her away and she hears her screaming in the middle of the night. She goes to find her and she's walking so slow. If I hear somebody screaming, even if I don't know it's my friend, I'm going to run in the direction to try to figure out what's wrong and help. But she's just tiptoeing over. She looks through the people, and as she looks through, she sees her friend tied up and they're about to cut her tongue off, and she just stands there watching. It's like, do something, do anything. I know if you do something, maybe they'll hurt you, but you also know that they don't want to touch you because of the baby that you have, so they're gonna do their best to keep you alive and keep the baby safe. So it's like, you've got some leverage here, but you're just walking around slowly doing nothing. Also, like, at one point she decides she needs to get away. It's actually the very next scene, and so she comes up with a plan to kill a chicken and use the blood to pretend it's her blood, like she's having a miscarriage, and she needs to go to a real doctor, so they'll panic and take her away, and so she can run away. Where does she hide the chicken? Under the bed. Right there. So naturally they rush her into the car and take her away, but then somebody discovers the chicken 5 minutes later and calls them because they have cell phones and goes, hey, bring her back. She's not actually dying. And so, yeah, it's just painfully bad writing at times where, like I said, it was an interesting concept. It was. And a lot of the acting was good. Some of the imagery was pretty good. it wasn't well made. It really wasn't, and it should have been, like, because some of the directing was on point, some of the cinematography was on point, but it felt so uneven and silly at times. Like, there's another point where this other girl kills herself because she wants to have been the new Mary, and so she jumps off a building. You see it in the trailer, her falling in the background. Very cinematic shot. Like I'm saying, some of that looks really good, but then they rush over and they're like, who is she? And they flip her over and they're like, oh my god, it's Isabella, but they're showing her face completely unrecognizable because she just face planted from 5 stories up into stone. You can't tell who that girl is anymore. And so that moment just kind of makes you laugh. And there's a lot of that where something's supposed to be scary or intense or whatever, and you kind of just giggle to yourself. You're like, what are we doing? And there was, unfortunately, a decent amount of that. So I know it sounds like, with how much I'm critiquing it, a 5.5 sounds generous, but really, it was cinematic enough and the acting was good enough and you cared about the characters for whatever reason that, yeah, I did enjoy moments of it, and just as many moments as the ones that I made fun of, frankly. And frankly, also making fun of it is a little bit enjoyable too. So I'm fine with giving it a 5 or a 5.5, even though it wasn't great. It was fine. It really was just fine. So that's what I had to think. What do you think, though? If you've seen it, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you're new here. Thanks, guys. Bye.